Right lads, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Today is the day of all days because today on Day Street Road in Today'sville, I'm going to be reacting to my Premier League predictions 2022-2023. As you're all very much aware, the Premier League season did just end on Sunday, and yep, today we relive some of Innocent Nua's most ridiculous predictions come the start of the season, and it's a little bit different to maybe some of the prediction reaction videos you've seen over the last few days on YouTube, because I actually didn't make a video on this at the start of the season because, well, simply put, I wasn't doing YouTube at the time, but I did tweet on the 4th of August 2022 at 11:20 p.m. my Premier League predictions for this season. So yeah, we're going to go through them, we're going to have a laugh, we're going to have a giggle, and we're going to laugh at my absolute embarrassment more than likely in this video. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into little old Innocent Nua's Premier League predictions from the start of the season. So yeah, let's just get straight into it. Starting off with bottom of the league, of course, I went with Bournemouth, and there was not any single fucker on this planet. You cannot tell me in the comment section below you didn't predict Bournemouth to not finish bottom of the table, let alone to survive. They ended up finishing 15th in the Premier League table, obviously 5 places above where I said they would finish, but in my defence, they did have Scott Parker, and I was predicting a Scott Parker's Bournemouth to finish bottom of the table. Gary O'Neill, he's done an absolutely ridiculous job there at Bournemouth. In my opinion, I think he's definitely up there for one of the hot contenders for manager of the season, up there with Eddie Howe in my opinion. So, but yeah, obviously Bournemouth had a really successful season in staying up so comfortably like they did, and made a few signings in January, which again, not making excuses, but is something that you can't really account for when you make these predictions at the start of the season. But yeah, Bournemouth, they proved me wrong. 20th place, and yet finished 5 places above where I said they'd finish. Now, 19th, Southampton, 1 place off. I did predict Southampton Football Club would be condemned to Championship football for the 2023-24 season, and yep, I was correct. Southampton finished bottom of the league, 1 place obviously below where I said they'd finish, and yep, I just thought the time would come for Southampton, because every now and then there's a team that's been in the Premier League for, so long that does end up just getting a little bit stale in the Premier League and does end up getting relegated. I thought that would be the case with Southampton. I thought they had a little bit too much inexperience. They signed a lot of young players last summer when you think of Romeo Lavia, Gavin Bazunu, Armel Bella-Kotchap, Sam Edozie, Seiko Mara, just for examples. And I just didn't think they'd have enough experience to stay in the Premier League this season, and I thought their time would come to an end. And yep, look who was right, because even though I didn't predict them in the exact position that they came in the end, I did predict that Southampton would be relegated. So yep, I will take that one. Now onto the last team I said would get relegated, and I said Leeds United would get relegated, and guess what? They got relegated. They did finish 19th. I said they'd finish 18th. So, yep, like Southampton, if we shifted those 2 teams downwards, I would have got these 2 absolutely spot on. But, yep, if buts and maybes, I said Leeds would go down. They did go down. I just felt like defensively, they've got little to no structure. They've got no real leadership in the team whatsoever. And with Patrick Bamford not firing and Jorginho Rutter, who came in January and failed to really make an impact on this team, I just struggled to see how Leeds wouldn't struggle in front of goal and keeping the ball out with their own net, which is exactly what I've said throughout this season with regards to my predictions on Leeds going down, which has basically maintained throughout this whole season. So yeah, I got that one right in terms of Leeds and Southampton going down, but yeah, we move. Now on to 17th, where I said Fulham would come 17th, and although I was one of the only people at the start of the season, bear in mind, that said Fulham would survive, however, they survived and some. They came 10th in the Premier League table, bang on in the middle of the table, and 7 places above where I said they would finish, as I predicted them to marginally survive relegation in 17th, and yeah, what a season Marco Silva has had with his Fulham team. Obviously, Alexander Mitrovic, João Palhinha, Bernd Leno, even their fullbacks, Kenny Tete and Anthony Robinson, who've been absolutely brilliant. Willian, who's been absolutely sensational. But yeah, I just thought Fulham, obviously in the last 2 seasons they've been in the Premier League before this season, they did get relegated, so I thought third time's a charm. I thought Fulham would have learned their lesson, and of course they did. Had a really good season, and in my opinion are looking good now to cement themselves as a mid-table Premier League club once again. I got that one wrong. However, I am taking some sort of pride in the fact that I was one of the only ones at the start of the season that said that Fulham would survive. Okay, enough of the bragging. 16th is where it gets a little bit dodgy, because I said Brentford would finish 16th. I said they would suffer a little bit with second season syndrome. Obviously they didn't. They went from strength to strength and finished 9th in the table, 1 place above Fulham, and yep, had a really good season. Ivan Toney, despite his ban in the later weeks of the season, bagged 20 goals this season, and Thomas Frank has exposed himself as an absolutely top class manager. I don't know if exposed is the right word to use in that context, but you know what I mean. Thomas Frank is an absolutely quality manager, has gotten the best out of this Brentford team, and I think we see Brentford now stay up for the foreseeable future. future if they can maintain Thomas Frank and retain his services, because yeah, he's done an absolutely incredible job at Brentford. They're obviously a very well run club, and yeah, finished 7 places above where I said they'd finish. So yeah, fair play Brentford, and I do really like Brentford and the way they're run, so I am taking pride in getting this one wrong. Now on to 15th, where I said Everton would finish. They weren't too far off it, in fairness. They finished 17th and marginally scraped over that survival line on the final day of the season, to the detriment of Leicester City and Leeds. And yep, I thought Everton would struggle this season, and obviously they did so, given the fact that they didn't once again really strengthen in the window. I thought Amadou Onana was a really good signing. I thought Idrissa Gueye was a good signing. Yep, I mean Everton, they're getting exposed in recent years for how poorly run they've been. I mean, the fact that under Carlo Ancelotti at one point they were actually serious contenders for a top 4 place, and yep, over the last few years it's gone absolutely down the shitter, and Everton have really struggled in recent years. They're going to need to get the finger out if they're going to survive relegation again next season, because they are slowly slipping down and down the table every single season that goes by. But yeah, long story short, I said Everton would finish 15th. They finished 2 places below that in 17th. So yep, I'll take a little bit of credit for that one in terms of I got whereabouts they'd finish anyway. Now on to 14th, the closest one I've got so far, besides obviously Southampton and Leeds. I went with Wolves, who finished 13th in the end, 1 place above where I said they'd finish. And yeah, to be honest, I thought Wolves would be there and thereabouts. To be honest, I thought they'd be just a fairly average club this season, to be honest. There's not really much more I can say. Obviously, Bruno Lage got the sack halfway through the season, brought in Julen Lopetegui when they were really struggling in the relegation zone and looked for a point like they could really struggle for relegation. But yeah, obviously Lopetegui's done a really good job there, and Wolves fans will be absolutely praying that they will be able to keep him next season, because yeah, he's done a really good job at Wolves so far. But yeah, long story short, Wolves, I predicted them 14th and they finished 13th. Not much more to say about them. 13th now, again, one that I was, got roughly right. Nottingham Forest, I said would finish 13th. Again, one of the only ones, well, not really one of the only ones, but one of the ones anyway, that said Nottingham Forest would survive fairly comfortably in the Premier League this season. Obviously, it wasn't as comfortable as maybe I'm making out, because they did, have a lot of trouble towards the last few games of the season, and only survived after that 1-0 win against Arsenal with 2 or 3 games to go. But they've had a really good season. I think finally Steve Cooper has found his best team, and the absolute mass influx of players that Nottingham Forest brought in the summer has now finally clicked and gelled, and yet Nottingham Forest ended up saving themselves in the end with a few games to go. And yep, I said they'd finish 13th, they finished 16th, and regardless of where I predicted them to finish, I did say Nottingham Forest would be able to retain their Premier League spot this season, and of course they did, so yep, I'll take it. Alright, 12th, I said Crystal Palace would finish 12th, they finished 11th, and to be honest, I'm a little bit ticked with myself on this one, because have you seen a more 11th place team than Crystal Palace? They finish 11th every single season, it feels like, but to be fair, at one stage they were struggling a little bit for relegation. They started off the season quite well, and then things went to shit for Patrick Vieira. Obviously he got the sack and Roy Hodgson came in and revived the situation somewhat. Finished comfortably in 11th place in mid-table. Long story short, I predicted them to finish around mid-table, and they did so I'll take a little bit of pride in it. Right, here's another, I suppose you could say, stinker. Brighton in 11th place I went for, and obviously they finished 6th and had an absolutely ridiculous season. And I don't care, once again, like the Bournemouth shout, there is no hope in fucking hell that any of you can realistically say to me in the comment section below that you thought Brighton would get Europa League football this season, and not only get Europa League football, but in the manner they did it, with Roberto De Zerbi having lost Graham Potter, their best manager in their history, before De Zerbi anyway, to then become a team that was dangerous to play against for literally every single team in the league. Obviously to hammer Chelsea 4-1 at home, beat them 2-1 at Stamford Bridge, to hammer Liverpool, to hammer Arsenal at the Emirates, and just play some absolutely scintillating football in the process, with obviously breakout stars like Kairo Matoma, Julio Enciso, Alexis McAllister, who really came on leaps and bounds this season. But yeah, Brighton have had an absolutely brilliant season, and yeah, even though I predicted them 11th, they finished 6th, but once again I will say that not many, if anyone, predicted that Brighton would finish so high up and have such a good season. So yeah, fair play Brighton, they've had an absolutely ridiculous season, and for their sake, and from a neutral's perspective, I really do hope they kick on now and can keep going in the right trajectory, because they are, to be honest, quite a likeable club. Right, now probably the biggest stinker in this video, I think it's fair to say, or maybe the second biggest, because you'll see one that's going to be probably the biggest in a few positions time. But I said Leicester would finish 10th in the Premier League, and obviously they got relegated, and for the third time I'm going to say in this video, there is not a hope in hell that any of you can legitimately tell me in the comment section below that you thought Leicester would get relegated. Tell me honestly, tell me absolutely honestly, we're all friends here. No one predicted Leicester to get relegated. They just had an absolutely nightmare season. To be honest, I was worried for them after they sold Kasper Schmeichel, the weekend before the season started, and didn't replace him, and had Danny Ward, their second choice goalkeeper, as their number one for the whole season till they brought in Iverson in the later rounds of the season. But yet they've really struggled in recent years. Leicester, an 8th place finish last season, which was deemed deemed a massive failure at the time after, back-to-back seasons missing out in the Champions League, which then was seen as a failure. Well, this has been the ultimate failure as Leicester slip into the Championship, and once again, like I say on Leicester countless times in the last few weeks, it just goes to show where the Premier League is at, where if you slip for just one season, you could end up into the Championship, and that's exactly what's happened to Leicester as a punishment for their poor recruitment over the last few seasons. And Leicester in the Championship next season. I said they'd finish 10th, they finished 8 places below that in 18th. So Leicester, good luck to you in the Championship next season, my friends. Now, Aston Villa, I'll take a little bit of credit for this one because I said they'd finish 9th, they finished 7th. They got themselves Conference League football. Fair play to Aston Villa. I mean, this was a Steven Gerrard team I was predicting to finish 9th, so maybe on the swing of things I was absolutely delusional to place them that high, but in the end Steven Gerrard did get sacked after having Aston Villa marginally floating above the relegation zone, and obviously Unai Emery's come in and since done an absolutely wonderful job at Aston Villa, getting them into Europe for the first time in fucking God knows how long. Long story short, Aston Villa, I got this one marginally wrong by 2 positions, and they've had an absolutely brilliant season under Unai Emery, and like Brighton, I do hope from a neutral's perspective they can keep this going next season, because again, Villa are a massive club who deserve to be there and thereabouts. Right, 8th. I said Newcastle would finish 8th. They finished 4th. Newcastle got Champions League qualification under their belt in just the first full season under this new regime of ownership, and Eddie Howe, in my opinion, manager of the season. I've done countless videos on Newcastle in the last few months and constantly said Eddie Howe deserves manager of the season for the job he's done, not only in strengthening positively and efficiently with obviously signings like Alexander Isak, Bruno Guimaraes, Nick Pope, Kieran Trippier, Dan Burn, but also improving those players who we all wrote off in this Newcastle new era of Miguel Almiron, Sean Longstaff, Joe Linton, Fabian Schär to an extent. I think Eddie Howe has done an absolutely insane job at this Newcastle team, and to say that Newcastle will get top 4 at the start of the season, it might be a little bit believable for some people, but for most people you'd be thinking, nah, way too soon. So Eddie Howe, he's done an absolutely ridiculous job. I said they'd finish 8th and they finished 4th, so hats off to Eddie Howe, my manager of the season, like I said. 7th, another potentially dodgy one. I said West Ham would finish 7th, they finished 14th, and to be honest, I mean, last season I said West Ham would finish in and around 12th and 13th and suffer with that second season syndrome after that really good season they had when Jesse Lingard was firing for the second half of the season and David Moyes was just getting everything right, and I was wrong with that one. So I thought, you know what, I can trust West Ham this season to go again and to once again qualify for Europe. No, they finished 14th in the end, and look, they had a really poor season. It picked up towards the end, but they won't complain if they win the Conference League. Obviously, they play Fiorentina in the final of that one in the next few days. They've had better seasons, I think it's fair to say, in recent years, and I was well off with my prediction here. I said they would finish 7th and qualify for the Conference League again. They didn't, and they finished 14th. 6 points above the relegation zone. So I will not take credit for that one. 6th, Manchester United. Now this was one that intrigued me because I wouldn't have thought I would have predicted Man United to finish so low down in the table at the start of the season, but apparently I did, and United ended up finishing 3 places above that in 3rd and qualifying for the Champions League with relative ease, to be honest, when you look at the course of the season really. And Erik ten Hag has done a decent job at Man United, I think it's fair to say. I think he's been very harshly criticised at times this season, in my opinion. I think even though he spent a bit of money, he had no choice to, but to be honest, I think the fact that he's obviously gone through this season without a striker, without a really competent goalkeeper with the ball at his feet, and dealing with injuries with Lisandro Martinez and Rafael Varane throughout the season, obviously was missing Rashford, who's been absolutely exploded onto the scene this season under Ten Hag's guidance, and missing Casemiro for what felt like half the season through suspension. I think Ten Hag's done a really good job at United this season, and I think he is now the man to take United forward in this new era, and will be the man to get them competing for Premier League titles again at some point in the near future. But to summarise, I said they'd finish 6th, they exceeded my expectations and finished 3rd, so fair play to them. 5th, I said Arsenal. I said Arsenal would miss out on the top 4, and my god did they prove me wrong, because they finished 2nd and bottled the Premier League. But like I say, I mean, even though they did, in my opinion, massively bottle the Premier League this season, I don't want to be too harsh on Arsenal, as much as I actually really want to, because I fucking hate Arsenal, but I just can't bring myself to really talk down on Arsenal that much, other than the fact they bottled the league, which, did I mention? Because, like I said, I mean, this prediction perfectly sums it up. I didn't back them to get into the top 4 at the start of the season, and they ended up finishing 2nd and qualifying for the Champions League absolutely 100% comfortably, and did have a really good season, regardless of what anyone wants to tell you. In my opinion, they have had a successful season when you weigh up the expectations they had on their shoulders at the start of the season and what they ended up achieving in the end. And I think with a little bit of depth and a little bit of leadership and a little bit of composure added to this Arsenal team next season, I do think they could potentially go again for the title next season, but yeah, I said they'd finish 5th, they finished 2nd, and were in a legitimate title race for pretty much the whole season, barring the last 2 or 3 games. So yeah, Arsenal I got a little bit wrong, I think it's fair to say. Into the top 4, this is where it gets a little bit disgusting, so to speak, because 4th place, I said Spurs would finish 4th, and they finished 8th, and Antonio Conte obviously was sacked 3/4 of the way into the season. Christian Stellini took over and Ryan Mason took over after that, and neither of them were able to improve Spurs' fortunes. They were absolutely horrendous this season without Harry Kane, who scored 30 goals in this Spurs team. I mean, if it wasn't for Harry Kane, you could make a legitimate argument for Spurs finishing well into the bottom half of the table. I mean, Spurs were absolutely treacherous for most of the season, and even in games they won, they were boring as fuck to watch most of the time. And yeah, just a really poor prediction from my end. They finished 8th, and yeah, I ended up saying they would finish 4th, and obviously they finished way lower than that and had a really poor season on the swing of things. So yeah, got that one massively wrong in my opinion. And it gets worse, ladies and gentlemen, because in 3rd I predicted my own club, Chelsea. I said I'd have a little bit of hope in my club this season under Thomas Tuchel after we spent £300 million in the summer transfer window. The worst mistake I ever made back in my own club, because we finished 12th in the Premier League, 9 positions off, where I said we'd finish, and yeah, we had an absolutely disastrous season. I'm so fucking glad we can see the back of it now, and to be honest, I don't even want to go into too much more detail on this season because I will end up having a mental breakdown. So yeah, I said Chelsea would finish 3rd, and they finished 9 places below that in 12th, and that was the stinker that I was saying to wait for in this video. So yeah, now you know, Chelsea, very poor prediction for myself. Now, 2nd. I said Liverpool would finish 2nd. They finished 5th. So if you swap Arsenal and Liverpool, it's not looking too bad, because I said Arsenal would finish 5th. They finished 2nd. I said Liverpool would finish 2nd. They finished 5th. I just thought Liverpool, with the fact that they took Man City right to the wire last season, I didn't think they struggled as much as they did. And obviously for the last 8 or 9 games, Klopp really got them clicking again with this 3-2-4-1 system that they obviously discovered. But yeah, on the whole of things, it's been a poor season. For patches this season, they've looked extremely vulnerable defensively. I will be intrigued to see how they look with this 3-2-4-1 going forward next season. With a few signings in there, I think Liverpool could be potentially back challenging Man City for the Premier League title next season. But as for this season, it's not been the best of years. Obviously, they missed out on Champions League qualification for the first time since one of Klopp's first seasons, to be fair, I think. And yeah, I said they'd finish 2nd. They finished 5th, and yeah, got this one obviously wrong as well. So yeah, then we move on to the champions, of course. The only one I predicted accurately in this video, although I'm not going to take too much credit for it, to be honest, because yeah, I'm fairly sure 95% of people thought that Man City would win the league this season, and obviously they did so. They took the first half of the season off, really let Arsenal have a little bit of hope, let their fans have a little bit of belief that finally they could win the Premier League for the first time since 2004. But the Man City animal once again steps in. You know what I will give myself credit for? When absolutely every fucker and their nan and their dog, and fuck it, their cat as well, were predicting Arsenal to win the league throughout the whole course of this season, I was one of the only ones that said throughout the whole chaos that Man City would still win the Premier League title this season. Even when Arsenal were 8 points clear with a game in hand, I still said Man City would stay strong and win the Premier League this season, and of course they did. And yeah, I will more than happily take this one, actually. I really will take credit for this one, actually, in hindsight, because yeah, like I said, most people thought Arsenal would win the league. They didn't. I said Man City would win the league. They did. No one is hated more than he who speaks the truth, ladies and gentlemen, and I once again retract to my favourite statement, as it's one that massively resonates with me. But yeah, in conclusion, I got 1 out of 20 right, which, to be honest, seems really shit on the swing of things, especially when you look at the predictions of Chelsea and Spurs and Leicester and Brentford and Fulham. But you know what? I don't think I was too wrong in terms of certain clubs, in terms of Southampton and Leeds getting relegated, in terms of Everton struggling, in terms of Forest, you know, staying up in the end after struggling, in terms of Palace coming in mid-table, and that's kind of it, really, to be honest. But yeah, I won't be too harsh on myself. I think it was okay overall, I think. But yeah, let me know what you think of these predictions down in the comment section below. And yep, I guess that's where we'll leave this video. So if you want to leave a like in the video, that would be absolutely massively appreciated. Subscribe to the channel. We are looking to hit 3,000 subscribers on this channel as soon as we possibly can. So every single one of you that hits that subscribe button, you'd be an absolute fucking legend and help me get there as soon as possible. And turn on the notification bell as well, because you will never miss one of these absolutely sensational videos, said no one ever. But yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video. Thanks very much for watching, and yeah, I'll chat to you later.